Hello everyone, the Nerdy Steve here, and today I wanted to do something different. Again, we will start playing with Dominaria cards very soon, but on my way as I'm streaming on the ladder on Magic Arena, right now I'm currently at rank 2. And so I want to go over an interesting game or match from yesterday from my stream that I thought was worth going over because I wanted to reflect on it. There are a couple interesting choices that I felt, I would love to talk about here. So let's go and see how this works. I'm not playing with any sound because it has my choices from stream here. So, whoops, so it's just gonna be silent with me talking. So let's hope it works. So right now, um, we have this hand, and this is a very slow hand, right? We have only turn 3 plays and nothing leading up to it, and no interaction, and hoping our opponent isn't an aggressive deck, and our opponent's mono red. So this is already a very bad sign. I am internally crying, and yeah, this is very bad. There's not going to be a lot we can do. Our opponent's going to body double with the Tiefling Outcast, playing it from their hand, and we are gonna be attacked for 4 here if our opponent doesn't have another creature, and our opponent does. And this is where we already are thinking, okay, we're going to lose, right? And that's okay. That is okay. We're playing our Sanguine Brushstroke because maybe our opponent only has lands in hand and nothing at all relevant. But this is just not a good place for us to be at all. You know, and it always is really unfortunate too. The mono red, out of like the 19 games I've gone against mono red, I've only lost one. So it is a very good matchup, but it is also a little disheartening, right? When you lose game one of a good matchup. Now, if I knew it was mono red, I obviously would have mulliganed, and that's something that you should probably keep in mind when, you do choose to keep certain hands. One thing that, maybe I could have done, right? And if when looking at the opening hand was going, wow, if my opponent is an aggressive deck, specifically maybe mono red or mono white, this hand is really terrible. Should I mulligan? And honestly, the I probably should have mulliganed that hand. Again, I tend to keep more hands than not, but like that hand, if I knew the matchup was an easy mulligan, like 100% mulligan, so that's just something to take into consideration, right? Like if something is an easy mulligan. Now this hand again, we our turn 2 play isn't particularly great, and our turn 4 play is Prosper. So not fantastic there, and probably should have mulligan, but I kept because, I was disheartened. But we drew a Blood Tithe Harvester, which is fantastic here, right? Because it really we get to use our mana on turn 2 for something that actually impacts the board. Because now, since even if our opponent removed it and our opponent did, we still have the blood and we can activate Oni and get a 1/1 for next turn, right? So this is like just really the hand got a lot better for us, right? So now we want to be very aware of, okay, our Oniko anvils will give us a lot of blockers for what our opponent is doing, right? Because our opponent's probably not going to attack here because they don't want to trade a 2/1 for our 1/1. And maybe they do. Who knows? They do have the uh molten fire thing going on that can deal damage to it overall, and they were probably just waiting to like not have to trade a creature but trade that resource. And now we have Prosper Tomebound, right? Which does a lot of things. First, it's a big card that our opponent is going to have to devote a lot of resources to play or to kill. And look, our opponent killed the artifact with the Molten Impact trigger and our Prosper, and that was part of like a really good idea, or why our opponent didn't trade the 2/1 earlier, right? But now we don't have a lot of things going on. we have our Oni Anvil, and we're deciding whether or not we want to activate an Oni now to get two 1/1 creatures here. The reason why I didn't, right, is because two Oni activations a turn are really, really good. And if we can get anything that creates a blood token, we're going to be in a huge, 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 very fantastic spot, right? So that didn't happen. And we're choosing not to activate Oni again. And this is something where I'm going in myself, should I have done it already? Because we could have gotten a couple more drains, and we would be at a much higher life. And I don't know what the right or wrong choice is. So right now I'm going to use the Takanuma to try and put, we have a Blood Tithe Harvester that we can get back. And this is going to allow us to sack the blood and get that train going. So we're really, really happy that we chose not to do the blood cult activation earlier because, we knew we could eventually get the blood tithe harvester back, right? But that is something where was it worth the 2 turns of not doing anything? Probably yes, but it is something, to consider, right? But right now, again, we're not in a very fantastic spot. We're still very. 9 life is not a lot. And also, what's really, really bad is if we don't draw a spell, our opponent's Reckless Stormseeker will. It will become night, and then Stormseeker will be getting trample, which is wonderful against our tokens. But getting the Deadly Dispute here to trigger the Oni and drawing more cards and casting the spell, it literally couldn't have basically gone better for us, right? So now we're looking at what our opponent is doing here, because it's going to inform us what's in the rest of the hand. So our opponent has the Amber Gris, which we love, because now our Voltage Surge can kill it, and our opponent's not going to be able to loot their hand away. And yeah, no, this is just great. We get to chump with a Construct on the Stormseeker, drain our opponent for one with the Oni and then deal another one with the Meathook Massacre. An Experimental Synthesizer here is just another wonderful draw. And this is why this matchup is pretty good. The Oni Anvils can provide so much advantage over time that, it's just so hard for the mono red deck to come back from. And right now we're just in a wonderful spot with the Sanguine Brush Stroke. Oni is going to deal 2 damage to our opponent, 2 more damage from Meathook dying, and then we get to drain with the Blood Hardest for another 2, right? So that's just a lot of damage and a lot of life. And in response to the Molten Impact, I am deciding to sacrifice the constructs to just deal as much damage as we want, because even if our opponent attacks and we don't block, it's not going to be lethal. So we're just fine here. Like, our opponent's at 1. Or no. Our opponent doesn't die. Oh, that was also another thing, too, that I wanted to bring up. I forgot to mention it. Etching of Kumano means all damage it dealt to our creatures doesn't cause our die effects to trigger. So our Meathook and Blood Artist don't trigger when our opponent deals damage and when those creatures die in combat because of Etching of Kumano. Only if we sacrifice it, the sacrificed creature wasn't dealt damage, so it dies regularly, but we don't have to, that's just something we want to take in consideration, and it's going to be very, very important here. Because this opening hand, I should have thought about it much, much more clearly here. So, we are going second, right? And my plan here is to play a Blightstep Pathway and then a Shambling Ghast, right? Because we want to get the Shambling Ghast early. It trades with a lot of our opponent's things, and it's just a really, really good card in this matchup. However, we are going to draw a Vodalin Epicure. And I should have played the pathway on red, then Epicure. Because right here, with this hand, I know I'm only going to be able to have one red source next turn, and so I can't Epicure and keep up a Voltage Surge. Where if I Epicure on turn 1, on turn 2, I can play the Shambling Ghast and keep up Voltage Surge. And this is going to really, really come back here, because now, what do? We can Voltage Surge the big spender, but then we're not adding a creature, and we know that Kumano is going to make our Shambling Ghast really, really bad, because if Shambling Ghast dies, it doesn't get the die trigger. So it's very, very important here how something so innocuous as playing Ghast over Epicure turn 1 has really, really impacted the course of the game just on turn 2, right? And that was something I saw right away, and it just didn't happen. Like, look here. If we had the red mana up here, we could have Etching of Kumano, killed Etching of Kumano in response, and when the Shambling Ghast dies, it could kill the Fireblade Charger, right? But look at what we drew. Now, we would still only have one red source, right? However, we would be on significantly less pressure, right? And we wouldn't be so constrained on all of our red mana. And that's really the important part here. Because like we would have a Voltage Surge down. We'd have one less red card to have to worry about, and we might have been able to cast a Sanguine Brushstroke here. And I just playing this is something that, you can't see the video of me behind here, my stream video, but I'm basically just crying to myself, going how bad this is, and how such a mundane, innocuous choice on turn 1 has really, really snowballed here, right? And just everything has compounded over time. So, again, we're not like absolutely going to lose yet, though it's not looking too hot because of how constrained we are here. But it is just, it's not the best thing in the world for us. Now, thankfully, we drew a land that came into play untapped, and we get the Sanguine Brushstroke here. And I'm surging the etchings during my turn, or I'm thinking of it, and I didn't. And I considered that because I don't want to Voltage Surge the etchings and then our opponent kill our Blood Artist in response. So, because I want to get as many life gain triggers as I can. However, I was, considering if our opponent had an Ambergris that I wanted to kill, or the Werewolf with haste that I wanted to kill, right? It was just something that, I was very, very cognizant of. Like right there, we didn't gain life from our Blood Artist dying. And so that's just something, to be aware of. So we're blooding away an experimental synthesizer now because we want to see what we draw. And again, another red card, right? And, that's just if we, had one less red mana to have to worry about the entire time, it just adds up. And maybe we could have played a pathway on red. I didn't because I wanted the Sanguine Brushstroke to come into play. But, like, that's... I don't know what the right or isn't right spot there. But it is just... That one red mana, y'all, it adds up. It adds up. So right now, we're taking a lot of damage, and our Voldaren Epicure has been traumatic pranked. So we need to find a way to get rid of it, or we're going to die very, very soon. We are very happy to draw the Brushstroke, because guess what? We need to gain life. And what we're going to do is have the Epicure there, and we have to figure out what we want to do here, right? And so we can... Voltage Surge is going to gain us a couple of life, hopefully, because if we kill a Charger, The Charger will then kill the Blood Artist, so we gain 2 life from there. But our opponent Molten impacts first, so we don't have that opportunity yet. So we have to Voltage Surge the Fireblade Charger. We gain life from the Blood Artist. Good. The Charger is what I think going to probably deal 1 damage to me. I'm hoping our opponent targets the Voldaren Epicure, but then that doesn't happen. So right now I'm going, we need to draw a Deadly Dispute so I can get rid of the Voldaren Epicure. Otherwise we're going to lose, right? Because it's dealing so much damage over time, and we need to get rid of it, right? And guess what we drew? I got excited to try and cast it right there. We want to attack to deal damage first, and then we can Deadly Dispute it away. And also now we can cast the Blood Tithe Harvester. Now, do I go for Viconia first or Harvester is a question. Harvester can block the Charger, and it will die. But we also, I want Viconia to be able to specialize, and I wanted to get it like, so I didn't want to leave it vulnerable to the Molten Impact. Also, it was really, really good because the Cardoom that came out, we needed to trade with it, right? And we were able to. If we cast Viconia, we would not have been able to trade with it. So that ended up also being the right for that reason. So right now, we can actually take a little bit of a deep breath because we're not dead yet. We're not in a good spot, but we're not dead yet. I'm gonna Viconia and exile a Blood Artist and another creature because I can specialize and figure out what I want to do, right? Because I really want Blood Artists onto the battlefield, and I ideally want to specialize it into black so I could drain our opponent for 2 when we cast it. But right now, our opponent is top decking. However, our opponent does have the Den of the Bugbear and a Fireblade Charger. So there is a lot going on here that isn't particularly good for us, but we're not dead. And that's really the important thing. Things started to go right for us a little bit, so we're happy. So Viconia will exile the Blood Artist here. And we breathe. And we hope to draw something really, really good. And we drew the Mountain. And the Mountain means we can specialize the Viconia into red, and then the Blood Artist can enter the battlefield. But I really want the black. So I'm thinking of using the blood away the Mountain. And that's what I'm going to do because I go, whatever I draw here, if it's not a land, it will be useful. And if it's not black, right? Like, I still might be able to, do something with it. So but it was a black card, so we get to specialize Viconia into Viconia's Disciple of Blood, which we then get to put the Blood Artist into our hand and modify it, so now we'll have a Blood Artist, but when Blood Artist enters the battlefield, we drain our opponent for 2 life. And that is just amazing. Right? Because now 5 is basically infinitely more life than 3 in this position. So we'll take it. But also to note, our opponent is at 8 life. And that's not that's not a lot. Like, now our opponent's at 6 life, which is a lot less than 8 life. And we're also thinking to ourselves, right? Ghast is really, really good here because Ghast can kill the Fireblade Charger, and then the Fireblade Charger can't do anything. And with this attack and knowing our opponent doesn't have anything in hand, we know we win because we get to let 2 creatures go through. 3 creatures die. So our opponent, loses a lot of life. We get to kill the Fireblade Charger. And we know that's not going to be able to do anything. And yeah, so we're just very, very happy here. Hoping we just don't mess up somehow. And hopefully we don't. But from a very, very rough start, we can now activate the Hive of the Eye Tyrant and attack for lethal. And it's going to be GG. And this was our, like, I think, seventh win at rank 2. And guess what? Still rank 2. So with all that being said, if you haven't already, you should totally like, comment, or subscribe. I hope this video was at least somewhat informative and somewhat cool. I like doing it. That third game just felt really, really good to me, as in, I made a huge mistake and blunder. I have gift commands on my channel, and I thought that was just really, really cool. So yeah, I hope everyone here has a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are, and thank you so much for watching this. And go to twitch.tv/thenerdysteve to watch me play Dominaria. Bye.